Have you guys seen like that Vine, like if Johnny jumped off a bridge, would you jump off a bridge?
Yeah, honestly, who hasn't seen that Vine? Oh my gosh.
Would you jump off the bridge to save Johnny? Well, that Vine kind of reminds me of the story of Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare.
Do you know what Romeo and Juliet is?
No. Do you know who William Shakespeare is?
I have no idea. Is he important?
Probably.
William Shakespeare is the author of this piece, Romeo and Juliet. Shakespeare was born on April 23, 1564, in his home country of England. Some people say he was educated in Stratford at the King Edward VI Grammar School. At the age of 18, Shakespeare married Anne Hathaway. From 1585 to 1592, William Shakespeare disappeared, which are now called his lost years. In 1599, the Globe Theatre was opened by Shakespeare. This is where his plays took place. In 1612, Shakespeare retired from the stage, and 4 years later, on April 23, 1616, passed away and is buried at the Church of Holy Trinity.
Shakespeare's key source of his story, Romeo and Juliet, was based off of the poem The Tragical History of Romeus and Juliet, written by Arthur Brooke in 1562. Three of the most famous performances were the ones at the New London Theatre in 1935, directed by John Gielgud, the Old Vic Theatre in 1960, directed by Zanko Zafriel. This is Franco's first professional Shakespeare production. The Royal Shakespeare Company had a performance of Romeo and Juliet in 2010. The director was Robert Gould, and this performance was written about in the New York Times.
Romeo and Juliet was first published in 1597 in an unauthorized quarto. Romeo and Juliet has been referenced in multiple entertainment productions, including Nomeo and Juliet, released in 2011, the song Love Story by Taylor Swift, and many more.
We will be performing Act 5, Scene 3 of the tragic misunderstood deaths of Romeo and Juliet.
Romeo Montague is the son of Montague and Lady Montague, sworn enemies of the Capulets. In this story, Romeo is 16 years old. He is first interested in Rosaline, but when he meets Juliet at the Lord Capulet's ball, he immediately falls in love with her and forgets about Rosaline. Romeo will do anything to prove his love to Juliet. He does this by secretly marrying her, and this is a big dishonor to his family because Juliet is a Capulet. Juliet Capulet is the daughter of Capulet and Lady Capulet, sworn enemies of the Montagues. Juliet was born in an aristocratic family, which means she had little to no freedom. Juliet is 13 years old in this story. She was first introduced to Paris by her family. They wanted Juliet to marry Paris in the future because they still considered Juliet a child. The Lord Capulet's ball was created for Juliet to meet Paris and fall in love with him. Juliet instead meets Romeo and falls in love with him. Juliet is reluctant to believe that Romeo truly loves her right away.
Friar Lawrence is a Catholic holy man. He was Romeo and Juliet's friend who secretly married the two, in hopes to end the feud between the two families. Lawrence was also the person to make the potion for Juliet, which puts her to sleep. Balthasar is the one who told Romeo about Juliet's death, and he was unaware that her death was fake.
The story starts with the Montagues and Capulet servants fighting, but the prince threatens them that if another fight happens, there will be retribution. Then the Lord Capulet's ball takes place. This is where Romeo and Juliet first meet with masks on. They instantly fall in love, even though their families would not approve of them. They then leave the party, and Romeo finds Juliet on her balcony. On the balcony, they both reveal how much they love each other and talk about getting married. Romeo and Juliet meet with a Friar Lawrence and are secretly married by him. Soon after, Tybalt challenges Romeo to a duel, but Romeo refuses. Instead, Mercutio, Romeo's friend, challenges Tybalt. Tybalt ends up killing Mercutio, so Romeo angrily murders Tybalt. The prince hears of this news and banishes Romeo. Romeo has to leave, which upsets Juliet. Juliet's father finds her sad and tries to cheer her up by arranging a marriage with Paris. Juliet meets with a friar who is talking about the marriage with Paris. Juliet threatens to commit suicide instead of marrying Paris, but the friar comes up with the idea of making a potion to make her appear dead. The friar makes the potion, and before Juliet drinks it, he promises to make Romeo aware of the ruse of Juliet's death. The nurse then finds Juliet, but she is aware of the fake death. Friar Lawrence announces the death of Juliet and says she should be buried right away. Before Lawrence can tell Romeo of the ruse, Balthasar hears of her death and tells Romeo. Romeo purchases poison and plans to commit suicide next to Juliet. All of this leads into our scene of the misunderstood deaths of Romeo and Juliet.
Here's to my love. O true apothecary, thy drugs are quick, thus I kiss and I die. Saint Francis be my speed, how oft tonight have my old feet stumble at the graves? Who's there?
Here's one, a friend and once that knows you well.
Bliss be upon you, tell me, my good friend, what torch is yon that vanity lends as a light? To gloves that eyeless skulls as I discern it beneath the Capulets' monument.
Doth so, holy sir, and there's my master, one that you love.
Who is it?
Romeo,
How long hath he been there?
full half an hour.
Go with me to the vault.
I dare not, sir, but I gone hence, and fearfully did menace me with death, if I did stay to look on his intents.
Stay then, I'll go alone. Fear comes upon me. Oh, much I fear, I'll unswiftly thing.
As I did sleep under this yew tree here, I dreamt my master and another thought, and that my master slew him.
Romeo! Hark! What blood is this? What stains? The stony entrance of the sepulchre? What mean these merciless and gaudy swords? To lie discolored at the place of the peace.
Oh, comfortable friar, where is my lord? I do remember well where I should be, and there I am. Where is my Romeo?
I hear some noise, lady, come from the nest of death, conjugal in unnatural sleep. A greater power than we can contradict. Hath unwatered intents come again. Thou watered and bosom there lies the dead. And Paris too, come, I'll dispose of thee. Among a sisterhood of holy nuns, stay not to question, for the watch is coming. Come, go, Juliet. I dare not stay no longer.
Then I'll be brief. Oh, happy dagger, this is thy sheath. There, rust and let me die.
Once Romeo sees Juliet's dead body, he is so devastated he decides he cannot live without her. He grabs the poison and drinks it. Right before he passes away, he kisses his wife for the last time. The friar realizes Romeo never got the message and goes back to Juliet so that he can be there when she wakes up. Juliet wakes up and finds Romeo's dead body next to her. She cannot be persuaded to let her husband's passing go by the friar, so he leaves. Juliet cannot live without Romeo, so she takes his knife and stabs herself to death with it.
The theme is about death and romantic drama. The importance of this section is that both lovers dramatically kill themselves to be with their true loves.
Many of Shakespeare's work contain many similar topics. These topics include tragic heroes and troubled relationships. Romeo and Juliet shows tragic heroes when Romeo kills himself when he believes his love has passed away. Troubled relationships is shown in Romeo and Juliet. In this work, both Romeo and Juliet are naive and fearful, and because of this, it ruins their love with death. This work proves the idea wrong, that love conquers all.
My thought on the play Romeo and Juliet is that it describes the idea of love. The fact that two individuals sacrifice anything to be with each other. The idea of doing anything for love. This exemplifies how love is an undescribable feeling. The problem is that Shakespeare takes it to an extreme level and then it's way over dramatic.
My thoughts on the play Romeo and Juliet is that this is very unrealistic and childish. I believe it is unrealistic because Romeo and Juliet met and instantly fall in love, but in reality, this does not happen. You can't say you love somebody if you don't know them. Lastly, I believe this play is childish because they kill themselves in an irrational manner, and who is mature, and someone who is mature would not make the decision just for love.
My thoughts on this work by Shakespeare is that the idea and concept of the work was very interesting and it intrigued me to read and watch this work, but the work also makes me mad that they're both very naive and they will do literally anything for love.